Exciting to be back for our second podcast episode. This is going to be the first of another three-parter, and today I'm here, Ann McKenzie, Development Associate with Collins Family Ministries, and of course I'm joined by our Chief Executive Officer, Kelly Ross.
Whoop, whoop. Glad to be here. It's always awesome to sit down and talk about the things that we're excited happening at Collins.
Yes, it is, and that is a very big topic. We're bringing in today our director and assistant director of ministry services. So let me introduce Jamie Martin.
So glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
We're so glad you're here. And this is Christina Rodriguez, our assistant director of ministry services.
Hello, everyone.
I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have Jamie and Christina here, and really want the community to understand so much more about the things that are happening at Collins Family Ministries. And it's interesting, when I came in a little more than a year and a half ago, one of the first people I met was Christina. So Christina was sitting at the front and just so bubbly. I'm like, I like this girl. I don't know her, but I really like her. She's bubbly. She's full of life. She had all this good energy, and just so impressed with her years of service at Collins. Christina's been there over 5 years now, right?
6 years, January.
Yeah, so 6 years in January. So she has seen a lot of history at Collins, not just where we were, but a great understanding of how where we were is taking us to where we're going.
Yes.
And it's interesting that first about 6 or 8 months at Collins, it was really in the admin office most days, just Christina and I, and had so much time to just really get to know her as a human, and to see her heart for children and families is very captivating. And to hear her story about being a pastor's kid and growing up in the church and how that really impacted her life, I was like, right now she's sitting at the front desk, but there's going to be a time when she's serving children at the next level. And really just seeing her kind of blossom into that and serving under Jamie. And then Jamie Martin and I met, golly, at least 20 years ago. I don't want to date us, but Jamie and I were both on staff at Foothills Church, and Jamie was working in the children's ministry, and I was in guest services, First Impressions at that time, and really just got to know her heart for children and families. And so when the time was right and we were looking to hire somebody into a role that would oversee our whole ministries department at Collins, Jamie was the first person that came to mind. I was like, this is the person. And we went through the process of interviewing all the people, and I was still like, this is the person.
She's the one.
She's the one. And then I hired somebody else and talked her out of the job, and immediately regretted it and had to come back to her and say, I got it wrong. You're really supposed to be here. What does this look like? Because Jamie has a young family herself. And for me, we can't be okay with serving other people's children and serving other families if we aren't really serving our family first. I think that's the biblical model. Yeah. And so my encouragement from the day that I was offering Jamie the job is, how can we build a team? How can we build a ministry services team that we think broader about the subject, right? We think more about what it looks like to be a ministry that's serving families and children. What does that look like, and how can we do it? I really didn't know, but I thought, Jamie's going to figure this out. And I'm not sure how quickly. I hoped that she would figure it out, but then as we kind of settled in and we got our wheels kind of going forward and really kind of building a strong house parent team, which is essential to Jamie and Christina really being able to serve families at the next level. Once we kind of got the wheels going there, I feel like this last 2 months have been just about pure momentum, and really Jamie and Christina discovering who they could become as a team, and really how that team functions inside Collins Family Ministries. And so when we were talking about what we wanted our next podcast to be, I'm like, it makes sense to introduce the rest of the child services or the ministry services team, because we had Kelly Liston on last month.
Yes.
And Kelly kind of talked about Shine for Your Future, and what a huge part of Collins that's going to be moving forward. But the thing I don't want us to ever forget is how we started. And really, that's what our conversation is about today. I really want this first segment, Ann, to be just Jamie and Christina sharing their heart for children and families, and how their passion is going to fuel what we're doing at Collins. So I couldn't be more happy with the two people who are leading our ministry services team. I just think it honors Collins. I think it honors God. And I think ultimately the rest of the community gets to see what I see, right? Like two people just destined to be around this table and destined to serve God and children and families at Collins. So, yeah, that's good stuff, right?
It's wonderful. And if you want to talk about big hearts, I don't think we can find bigger hearts than the two that are at the table today.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much.
My head just expanded.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So let's start with you, Jamie. Tell us what you do at Collins.
So my title, as you shared, Ann, is the Director of Ministry Services. And when I onboarded in April, really I was learning the ropes. I was learning how to do the case management piece. I was getting to know the children and their family situations, and really receiving great training from the person who came before and served in the role for many, many years. At the time, we were licensed with DSS. Now we're registered with DSS. And once we took that step into registration, I said, you know what, we can really expand this ministry in some really fun and cool ways and serve families at a higher level. We have sheltered families really, really well. Sheltered children really, really well. But my heart said, you know what? We need to be serving the parents who have made the difficult choice to place the kids here. And so Christina and I get to do that together, which is really, really awesome. I can't say enough about this wonderful, wonderful woman that I get to serve alongside. We
not crying on this
Don't cry. We pray together often, just that God would lead us in all of our next steps. And we feel it's really evident right now that God is saying, serve these families well, pour into them, help them to see their worth, and that how He created them, and what they have to offer, and focus in on reunifying their family much stronger than when they entrusted us with their children, and
With Him at the center, most specifically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I can say all the same things about everybody at this table, but I've said for many years, the second that I started at Collins Home, this is my favorite job. It will always be. I will likely retire out of it. But working specifically with Jamie about everything that we do, the reimagining, like Jamie mentioned, we went from being licensed to registration, and what it meant was it opened up for us to be able to serve the families as a whole. We sheltered children well, and we've always taken care of them, but it helped us in many new ways really wrap our arms around the whole family and give them whole care and see how, meeting them where they're at and really figuring out what can we do that their home is stabilized and that it's strengthened and they're back together and that God is in the center of it. So I'm her right hand, basically, and all of that to make sure we do it. Support
Christina
as much
has
as I
been
can.
the right hand of Collins as a whole ministry for a long time. And honestly, those first 6-8 months where it was just you and me, I was like asking all the questions all the time. And Christina always knew the answers. And it's interesting how many people in this community know Christina and how many people in this community Christina knows.
Yes.
And, having that on our team, no matter where it is on our team, is so valuable to us. And I think it's so funny. Like the other night we had a big event, and it was like my first event without Christina nudging me and saying, hey, this person is such and such, or hey, this person is so and so. And I was having to walk around with my little notebook making notes. I'm like, where's Christina? What is going on? I'm like, oh yeah, she's serving children tonight. I guess I'll let her slide.
Well, I want to dig into that a little bit, the passion that y'all have for serving children. So where did that come from? Is this something you've nurtured your whole life?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like my whole life I have been wiggling around a career path that has always centered on children and family. To be quite transparent and honest, my parents were not together when I was a child. And I feel like a lot of my passion for whole family comes from my experience with that. I had wonderful, wonderful mom who just saw strengths in me and nurtured all of the things that, led into life and ministry. But until I saw this role at Collins, everything just kind of seemed compartmentalized. I had an interest in children. I had an interest in education. I had an interest in pouring out all that God was pouring into me and helping others find Jesus. I had an interest in developing people, meeting them right where they were, and just figuring out what their next steps were. And this role just kind of captures all of that in the most beautiful and unexpected way, because I get to kind of pull in all of those experiences and say, all right, well, here's this family who maybe needs some assistance in this particular way. Maybe they're behind in education because they missed a lot of school. Maybe there's a disability related factor. Maybe their family's not together right now. Maybe there's this financial piece that's weighing heavy. And how can I serve them right where they are?
Yeah, it's same reflection for me too. Not necessarily career-wise specific to children, but I worked for my parents prior to moving down here, so family has always been super important. My parents are first-generation immigrants, so I think kind of what comes in the territory, a lot of that is when you're in a new place, a new country you don't know, you spend a lot of time with sometimes the people that you just speak your same language. So family has always been super important. My parents have always been incredible examples and nurturing same way. Specifically, both of my parents, but I have a super strong relationship still with my mother, that she has always probed the right places to move me forward and let's rethink this. And so that has been instilled in me from my parents to then give to other people. But I was also the kid, I remember being 11 and I'm going to have 12 kids. And then you grow up and you recognize how much money that is and what it would take on the body. And now I think God gives you things. He gives you these longings in your heart that are from Him, and then He gives it back to you in ways that maybe you don't recognize or not ideal that you want. And Collins Home feels like an answer to that. You're going to have 12 kids without having the 12 kids, if that makes sense.
It's going to be 20 kids.
Yeah, right. In my time, it's probably been 50 kids, in the 6 years. So.
Yeah, and I think about Christina too, just culturally speaking, coming from a Cuban family, you want to speak to the importance of family in your culture?
Yeah, it's the number one thing. Prior to I don't know how political we want to get, but prior to the regime, I think if you get to the culture of Cuba and of Cuban people, a good example is my grandparents. So my paternal grandfather, he had maybe 16 siblings, and it was not necessarily that they were biologically, it was that if there was a family in the area that had money, they took in all the kids that they could to help the other families be able to get on there. So there's a photo that I found actually recently of all of him and all his siblings sitting at a table, the 16 or 20 of them or whatever it was, that some of them look like him and some of them don't. And it's because they had money at the time, so they took kids in and that's how they cared for them, gave them jobs or whatever it made sense in the time. So family and working for the wholeness of a community and not just because it's sheltering people. It's not just I'm going to give you money or I'm going to give you a job. I'm going to take you in and I'm going to do life with you. So it's hugely important for us.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of Collins, right? We have these beautiful 10-foot round tables inside each of the homes, the boys' home and the girls' home. And the people sitting around that table don't always look alike.
Yeah.
But they share a common bond. And that's that when there was a time of need, somebody was there for them. And how cool is that? We get to carry on Christina's family tradition here in the United States and really looking at families in a whole new way. Family is not necessarily about our DNA.
Right.
Yeah.
It can far reach that and far past that. And I think about the sister I have in Christ who led me to the Lord. She and I look nothing alike. We don't even share the same skin color. But she will forever be one of the most important people in my life. And she is my sister. Yeah. And so, I just love the fact that at Collins we get to reimagine what family looks like.
Yeah.
And go back to the roots of how God intended for it to be.
Yeah.
Too. You know,
It's,
like
it's a great example of the body working. Definitely.
Well, what would you ladies like to talk about next?
There you go.
I could continue to talk about how great Jamie is. I guess if I'm answering the question of what I want people to know about Collins Home, so I've been here for 6 years. I kind of have the seniority, or whatever that means. I have seen transition a lot in the last 2-3 years. I have seen the kind of the handing off of legacies, and I will tell you that I am so grateful that I have been a part of every part of it, and I don't mean to demean in any way what came, but it was clear that those were building blocks for what is and what is coming. The fact that we're working to with Shine and bringing them in and doing all of that for the 18 and 26-year-olds elates me. We've been talking through counseling services because our community is in need of, I say it all the time to them, I think everybody should be in therapy at some point in their life. It's worth it.
Yes.
And I think the church, not every pastor has every time available for, so if we can be a resource for that, it's really important. And I think God is calling us to that. And so it's not just, I think a lot of people have associated rightly so that we're just a children's home, whatever that means. But really there is real care and change happening with these kids, with their families, more than I've ever seen before. And I'm just, again, I go back to God gives you these things in your heart, people that you care about or things that you care about, and then he gives it to you in ways that you didn't expect. The fact that when I started at Collins Home and just praying over the kids that were there and seeing, what was going on with the state and DSS and all of that, seeing now where we are, that there's so many doors open and there's so much potential and there's so much community around us that wants to do this for our kids and for just the people that are here. It's not necessarily just our kids, just people that are here in this community. Like, it's a testament to God is listening, and this is where he wants us to go, and this is what he wants for his people.
Yeah, and I think the coolest part about this whole thing, it is a building block, right? Like, we will always be, and I think it's important for the community to understand, we'll always be a children's home.
Yeah.
We always have been, we always will be. But even before, when this was just a small dream in the heart of Joe and Ann Rackley, we were more than a children's home to them.
Yeah.
From get-go. It was never just an isolated children's home. It was so much more than that in their hearts. And I think the coolest part, I'm a historian. I love history. I love pulling all of the things out. I mean, I'm sick and twisted. I like to read old board minutes and try to figure out where we were and what was the goal of that. And then to be able to pull out old drawings of Collins from the very beginning. And I keep it in my office because I always want to be reminded transitional housing was always deeply embedded in the hearts of the Rackleys.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, when I first pulled out this drawing, and it was a drawing of the admin building, and it had these 3 little apartments out there. I was like, that's so random. What's that about? And I immediately picked up the phone and called Ann, and I was just like, hey, Ann Rackley, what are these? She said, we had this idea that we would need to provide transitional housing for those who aged out of Collins. And so for us to look